My grandfather had a very sort of, massive library, and I spent a lot of my childhood in that library. And I discovered T.S. Eliot, and I very specifically remember this line from an Eliot poem, which spoke about disturbing the universe and eating a peach at the same time. And I was amazed by it because I thought it wasn't a possibility. Like, my imagination just galloped in so many ways. I'm not a huge Eliot fan anymore, but I think that was my beginning. I think I was about 8 or 10. And that's how I got started with poetry, because I thought it expanded imagination. It kind of gave you this freedom to express yourself in ways that wasn't available. Particularly because as a child I suffered a lot because of my parents being separated, and I had to create my own worlds inside my own mind, and poetry became like a vehicle for that. So I think that's how I got started with poetry. In terms of influences, I have a mixed ethnicity. I'm half Indian and I'm half Romani Spanish, and I'm very influenced by the concept of duende, which is a Spanish concept. It's used very frequently when we refer to flamenco dance or music, but it's an underlying concept that the art or the concept of art works through you. It's not from you, but it works through you. So if you leave yourself open to interpretation and to the moment or to the muse, then it will cast itself through you. And I remember one specific line which has become very significant for me, by the master of Spanish poetry, Federico Garcia Lorca. And he said that there is no map or discipline for duende, which is kind of my writing process also. And he spoke about how eventually when it took over, when you wrote or when you created or when you danced, it was like powdered glass in your blood. So I think that's the influence for me. My process is very sporadic. I call it an assemblage of fluxes because I'm a psychologist by profession. My writing essentially involves stealing time between patients or clients to try and jot down poetry. So as opposed to writers who will probably tell you, or poets who will tell you that they have a routine around it, mine is very much a case of sort of unprogrammed aftermaths, epiphanies, and I jot down things throughout the day whenever I have time. That's also a compulsive habit of a psychotherapist, to make notes. So I kind of bring that over to when I write poetry. I think that habit kind of gets translated or transferred. There's no particular ritual, but yet it is ritualized because this habit of jotting down notes, from writing it in a therapy notepad to writing it on Google Keep, has become my ritual. Once I get to the point of creating the poem, that's a very quick process for me, and I don't edit it afterwards. But like, I'm a compulsive ant. I always say that I'm like an ant because I gather a lot before I write a poem. I've never heard of so many amazing women from so many different disciplines coming together and performing on the same evening. I think that's a huge plus point. And this is the first time I'm going to read poems in 3 languages, which I've never done before, in India at least. So I think that's also a good reason you should show up.